Okay, that's okay. That's fine. So normally nowadays, okay, before I start OData, let me explain uh, what is the reason and why we need OData in our SAP UI5 app. Okay, so let's talk about the current market situation. So nowadays, if you see the growth of mobile devices, right? The growth of mobile devices is rapidly growing, right? It's rapidly growing. Each and every one of the customer, they have at least more than one phone, mobile phones, right? And they want everything to be like every business operation can be performed or it can be performed on the mobile devices. You have seen that because everything we can do on the mobile devices nowadays. Each and every type of application you can run, like it's a iOS application or Android application, even Windows, right? Because we have each and every type of device, mobile devices, according to the OS that we have. So now, because of the mobile growth, there are a lot of developers in the market. Okay, so the developers can be from SAP side or from non-SAP side. For example, if I'm a web developer and I know only HTML, JavaScript or Java or .NET, so I don't have any specific knowledge about SAP background. Okay, so now just tell me, if I don't know anything about SAP, then how should I communicate my mobile devices? How I can provide access to my mobile devices to SAP world? You got my point, right? How I can provide or how my mobile device can have access to SAP world or SAP system. Okay, because there are even the developers. And then see, let's say if I know SAP, definitely I can, at least I have a basic overall idea about the SAP background and all. But if I'm a non-SAP side, like if I don't know anything about the SAP transactions or even the SAP screens, anything, because I am a .NET developer. I'm just developing the applications. I create the applications which can run on mobile device. But my mobile device doesn't have access to SAP world or SAP system. So to overcome this situation, they have what they have done. They have introduced SAP Gateway. Okay, they have introduced SAP Gateway Server. So what is the purpose of SAP Gateway Server? So using SAP Gateway Server, your mobile device can have a access to SAP World. So now how this SAP Gateway Server, so SAP Gateway Server, it's more of like an interface. Okay, it's more of like a interface to SAP systems. So we have a two type of backend system available in SAP. That is, one is SAP Business Suite and second is SAP S4HANA, right? So these are two backend SAP systems. So now when you want to access any data from those respective systems, how you will do that? So you already have access to database tables, so you can just open, but we want to provide that access to the outside world. Outside means like if I'm creating any application like Angular, or I'm creating an application for web application I'm creating, okay, using HTML, JavaScript and all. So all this application must have access to that SAP data, right? It should have access to SAP data or not? It must have. Okay. So to provide access to SAP data to non-SAP world, they have introduced SAP Gateway Server. Okay, so SAP Gateway Server, it is an interface between non-SAP world and SAP world. Okay, and SAP Gateway Server, it's more of like an infrastructure which has all the capabilities and the tools, components which are installed and which can help us to create our own OData service. Okay, so it has a provision where we can create our OData services, we can host, and that OData service can be exposed to the outside world. So now what is OData service? That we need to understand. So OData service, it's more of kind of an open data source protocol, you can call it as. Okay, it was originally invented by Microsoft. It was originally invented by Microsoft. Later on, it is considered as a standard. It is considered as a standard for sharing the data from database to database on the web. Like any data you want to access from database, so you can easily access that. You can easily access that through the web or on the over the internet. You can access that data, and how that is done, because OData service is directly making connection to the database. Okay, it's pulling all the data which is available in the database, and that data is passed over the internet using HTTP protocol. Okay, so like World Wide Web. So we know www, right? So it is an example of HTTP protocol. So when you search for anything, one read call is done. What it does basically, it calls one service to read the data. So similarly, when we want to read any data from database from SAP, so we will definitely make one read call from OData service, which will trigger get as a HTTP methods. Okay. So wait, I think it's confusing only, right? So wait, just 1 second. Okay, let's consider just 1 minute. I'll just add. You can see my screen, right, guys?
Yes.
Okay. So at least you got it, like the basic idea about the gateway server. So gateway server, it is an interface to your backend system, first of all. And then through that interface, we can have a access to the outside world. Means through the gateway server, our mobile devices or even other applications are directly interconnected with the gateway server. So any communication you make to the database, it's directly done through the gateway server. So it is acting as a middleware between your backend system and your devices, which will consume that data. So just 1 second. I think this one. So let's consider this is my HTML slash this is my HTML. Again, this is .NET. Okay, and now this is like a web application. Okay, so all this application, so let's consider there are different types of applications which are available in the market. Okay, and now to access the data, okay, let's say we want to access this data from SAP site. Okay, so when you want to access the data, so let's consider this is our SAP system. So this is the SAP system we have on the top. What is happening? I'm not able to type here. Okay, let's consider this is your SAP system, and we have a different applications, like different types of applications which are available in the market. And now all this application required data from this SAP system. Now, when it comes to the SAP system, there can be different types of backend systems available within this. Okay, let's consider like, so this is your CRM. Okay, this is your ERP. Again, let's consider it is SCM. Okay, so all these are different backend system, or you can call it as different types of backend system which are available, like CRM, ERP, SCM. All these are backend system. Now, my application, let's consider my application needs a data from the CRM. So as a developer, what I need to do before the gateway server, okay, I'm talking about the time when the gateway server was not introduced, okay, and even the OData service. So if I have to provide a data from CRM to all these apps, so what I have to do, I have to create point-to-point connection. So I have to create a point-to-point connection between this CRM and this HTML. 1 second, wait. I think the color I will change. Yeah. So I have to create a point-to-point connection between this HTML JavaScript, and again, even let's say the same data is required for the .NET as well. Okay. If the same data is required for .NET as well, then in that case also we have to create one more connection or configuration which will provide the data from CRM to the .NET. And again, same to the web application. So how many configuration I have to create just to provide the data? Okay, if I want to access the data from this CRM to this HTML5 apps or .NET apps or web application, so for that I have to create a specific configuration. Okay, I have to create a framework and I have to configure in such a way that it should provide the data to all these applications. But let's say now I need a data, or I need a data, or I want to access the data from the ERP. So when you want to access the data from the ERP, again, one more configuration is required. Okay, I have to configure a framework and in such a way that it should provide the data, or it should read the data from this ERP system again back to the HTML. Okay, now let's consider this is your. So now again, I want to read the data. Now same, see, we are creating point-to-point connection, guys. All this is point-to-point connection which we have to create in order to read the data from the respective system. So now tell me if you are creating a configuration or a system, like definitely you need a framework to be set up, right? A infrastructure is required to set up in order to access the data from CRM or ERP to the respective application. A framework is required, an infrastructure is required for this. Then only we can access the data. And within that infrastructure, again, the security is security, even authorization, everything is set up. So every point-to-point connection will increase the cost. Okay, the cost is involved in order to set up this type of infrastructure for data access, right? And even the protocol is different. Like let's say for to access a data from CRM to JavaScript or any other application, I'm making a use of HTTP protocol. Now I'm using a different REST API or different like SOAP. I'm using a SOAP connection or SOAP API to access the data from ERP to the respective systems. Again, from SCM, different type of protocol is used. So from every backend system, if I want to access data, to this application, I have to create a different infrastructure with a different protocols. Okay, and to do that, the cost is involved. High cost is involved in this to achieve. So now to overcome this, we need one single protocol which can provide a data to all this different system. No matter from which system you're accessing that data and to which device we have to provide that data. Okay. I don't want to rely on the infrastructure because see, the infrastructure which I have done, the infrastructure which I have configured for CRM, which will provide a data to this different types. I cannot use the same infrastructure for the ERP system. And that same as well for the SCM, because the protocols which I am configuring, the infrastructure which I'm setting, it's not transferable. Okay, you cannot use that existing infrastructure for ERP. So in order to, for every system, definitely the different infrastructure we have to set up, and again a different protocol is required for the security reason. So to overcome and to reduce the cost, what they have done, they have introduced a single server and the single protocol, that is OData protocol. Okay, so OData protocol, it's a open data protocol which has been introduced to access the data from any backend system to the front end. Okay, so from front end, I can develop any application, like it can be a Java application or Angular application or even a basic HTML JavaScript application. Any application I can create, and even the mobile devices. Okay, so to provide a data to any means of apps, I can simply provide the access to the SAP data using what? Using OData protocol. So if you remove this image, wait, I'll tell you 1 second, just. Okay, so to provide access to the different, what we can do now, so there can be a single. Okay, so if this is a SAP system, okay, if this is a SAP system which we have, okay, so if this is a system, so you can directly provide one single access. Okay, you can directly provide access to this using OData protocol. Okay, you can directly make communication with any data using a single protocol, that is OData protocol. Okay, how that is done? It is done using OData protocol. So the main purpose of OData protocol is what it does. It's an open data protocol which will provide access to the database data, the data which is available in the database. Okay, it provides the access to that data over the internet or over the web. So any data you want to access from this respective backend system, for that we can use OData. And that's why OData, it is considered as a standard nowadays, and it is being used by many popular companies nowadays, like IBM, Microsoft, even SAP. Okay, all these companies are using OData protocol as a means of data communication. Like the data that you want to access, for that they are using single protocol, that is OData protocol. Okay, and how this OData protocol is used? So this OData protocol, it will provide the access to this SAP system using gateway server. So gateway server, it is more of like a infrastructure which is which will work on this backend data. So any data, like basically in SAP, we have only two SAP systems, like SAP Business Suite and SAP S4HANA. So these two systems are directly integrated within a gateway server to provide the access to the data. And then through that gateway server, the OData services that we are creating, these OData services are implemented on the gateway server. Okay, so any service that you want to create, so that services are hosted on the gateway server. So within a gateway server, we can implement the OData service, and OData service will have access to this backend data. And that data only, it will be passed from gateway server to this application using OData protocol. So OData protocol, it is an open data protocol which is based on REST API. Now, anyone knows what is REST API? Anyone knows what is REST API? Okay, I'll explain. So REST API, it's more of like a design philosophy. Okay, it's like a design philosophy which is followed in OData protocol. Now, see, when you read any data from the server, so definitely there are some certain rules and guidelines which OData protocol must follow. Okay, OData protocol, it is totally based on REST API. Now, what is REST? REST is representational state transfer. So basically, REST, what it does, so see, whatever the traffic is there over the internet. Okay, so on internet, like there can be many certain users who can make a communication with your backend server, right? Just to read the data. So all this traffic, all this traffic will follow some guidelines or will follow some certain constraints. Okay, and they will follow some certain rules, and that rules are being provided by the REST API. So there are 6 types of constraints which REST API will provide. That is, client server architecture is the first constraint. So what is client server architecture? Client server architecture means, so the work which is assigned to the client, okay, the work which is assigned to the client, only client will do that. Server will not be involved in that. And even the functionality which is provided to the server, in that client will not be involved. Okay, so for example, what is the purpose of client here? To represent the data. And what is the purpose of server? To provide the data for the representation, right? So so there should be a client server architecture involved while building this services. Okay, so this is one of the constraint that REST API provides. Because what we don't want that client to involved in the server activities. So client, what is the purpose of client? Just to represent the data. So it should do only that thing. It should not involve in the server activities like storing the data of the database. Okay, that is not a main concern for the client. So it is only concern to the server. So that is the first constraint. So it must follow client server architecture. Second is catchability. So what is a catchability? So catchability means like it basically helps in improving the performance. Improving the performance means like any request that you fire, like let's say you want to read a data. Let's say you want to read the data from the server. Okay, so when you trigger a request, definitely that request will hit the server. And now what server will do? The server will send one response, right? And within that response, it must carry one indicator whether that data or whether that data must be cached for future use or not. Okay. So why it is cached? Just to improve the performance. Let's say if that data is already available, the next time you don't have to read the same data from the server. It mostly used in case of libraries. Okay. Because if let's say if you are if you want to test a same app for like 100 times, okay, so do you think that 100 times it should read same library again and again? So instead of that, what we can do, the library which is used, okay, the library which is used for running the application, if that library is already exist, okay, if that library is already exist within a client side, like within a client browser, if that library is already cached, then next time we don't have to load that library. So what it will do, definitely it will improve the performance. So the libraries which are already loaded on the client, it must not be loaded. It should be cached. So for that, server must carry some indicator which can help for the future use. Okay. So that is a catchability. Now, after that, what is statelessness? So that is one more constraint of the REST API. What is stateless? So the communication that you make, okay, the communication that you make between the client and server, it should be stateless. Means server should not hold any sensitive information of client. Okay, it should not hold any sensitive information of client and even the session. Okay, so that's what we need, a stateless interface between, or a stateless uh, constraint between your client and the server. The information which is not required, okay, the unnecessary information must not be stored by the server. So every communication that client makes to the server, it must be anonymous. Okay. The main reason is that the server should not hold any client information. So that is one reason. So that is your stateless. And and there is one more constraint, layered systems. So guys, whatever I'm talking about, all these are constraint that REST API provides. And all these constraints are applicable to OData protocol because OData service or OData protocol is totally based on REST API. Okay. So any data which OData is carrying, so it carries by following all these guidelines or following all these constraints, because OData is totally implemented on, or it's totally based on REST API. Okay. So now what about the layered system? So this is a fifth design, sorry, it's a fourth design, it's a constraint of REST API. So what is a layered systems? Layered system means now whenever you're making a communication to the server, okay, so what is the exact endpoint address of server? That should be always hidden, because we any client, right? Because we don't know, that client can be even hacker, which can hack the data from the database. It can hack the server. So to avoid this and to provide more security, there should be a layered systems involved in this architecture. Okay. So whenever you make any connection, so definitely that connection won't be directly hitting to server. So there should be some middleware systems. And again, from middleware, it should hit the backend system. So the data cannot be directly transformed to the client from the server to the client. There must be some intermediate servers involved in this, so that with the help of that, we can have more security. Okay, we can have more security if any one request is fired to the server. So in this case, the client will not know the exact endpoint details of the server. Okay, because there are multiple systems involved in this process. Okay, that is nothing but your layered systems. Okay, guys, whatever we are talking about, are you able to get this or not?
Oh
I
yes,
know
sir.
it's more of theoretical, but we have to learn, or otherwise what I will do, see if you are not able to get this right, I will share one document as well for this, so that you can just go through this document, the basic document. Okay. And you can see like what is a basic understanding of OData, and even what is REST API. So there are a lot of blocks available in the available. You can simply search in Google and you can easily get. Okay, all these are details, basic details which are available. It's not that I'm teaching anything extraordinary here. It's already available. Okay, so I think without wasting
Abhi,
further time, yeah, tell me.
yeah, sorry. I have one doubt actually. When it says, client will hold the record actually from whatever ordered service it got called. So it means, let's say from one page to another page you are going. So client will
Mm-hmm,
hold the record for the same. Let's say the second page also use the same amount of data which the first page using. So let's say
mm-hmm,
another page is also there which which use the same data which the first page is using. So
mm.
this client will hold the record for uh,
No, see, that record is just a static record, right? Like after reading the data, so now it
mhm,
will only hold that data for that session. Who will hold? Only client will hold. There is no session involved between your server and your client, right? So
mhm.
it's only all about the client. So client
And
will
still,
hold that data temporary. But once your session is gone, like once you reload the entire application, so the data which is stored within your client, that will be gone, right? That will be cleared out.
yeah. So let's say I have logged in and I am using, and the same section is continuing actually.
Mm-hmm,
So, I mean, client will hold the data you were saying, right? Because I will not close the whole application. I will not,
mm-hmm,
refresh the from browser. So in
mm-hmm.
that case, the client will hold, this records,
Yes.
whatever,
In that case, client
mhm,
will hold some data. It will hold some records,
mhm,
but the purpose of client is not to
mhm.
store the data, right? Main means it will not act as a server. Means let's
Yeah,
say
actually,
now
let's say,
now if
mhm.
I'm storing some data on the browser and now I want to use that after 10 days. So will that be possible on the client?
No, that won't be actually. Yeah.
Yes. So that is what we are talking about, the client server architecture.
Mhm, mhm. Fine, fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So now I think the theory is enough. We covered a lot of theory and unnecessarily, and we almost wasted around 40 minutes for this theory, right? So let's jump back to like where we can develop these services, and what is a T code for that, and how to build a